pleased to be here with everyone today. This is a topic that is definitely near and dear to both Tina and my hearts. Tina and I have had the opportunity over the years to work very closely together. I'm the CFO at Oshkosh. She leads now HR for our commercial segment, but previously, and she'll give a bit more background, but was really responsible for corporate benefits. And really, we've had the opportunity to collaborate, and I think we've had learnings over our careers working together. And hopefully you can all benefit from that. So what we want to do is, I'll get into the agenda in a moment, but we just really want to provide a bit of a backdrop of some examples where we've partnered together. Before we do that though, of course I have my obligatory forward-looking statement. But, oh, why did I lose that? I'm not sure what's going on there. There we go. Just from an agenda standpoint, so I thought it might be helpful to provide a little bit of context, first of all, on Oshkosh Corporation. It's really, if you think about what our focus areas are, our strategy, and really our core values, it all ties back to people, whether it's people working in our organizations or it's our customers. So I think providing some background, I think it will become very clear when we start getting into some of the examples why the interaction of finance and HR is so critical. It's really critical to our people, it's critical to our strategy and our success. So I'll give you a little bit of background, and then we'll go into a few examples of where we've collaborated and really saw benefit. And then we'll wrap up with Q&A. So again, real quick, we'll introduce ourselves, give a little bit of background, and actually, Tina, do you want to start?
I'll start. Yeah, thank you. So thanks for having us here, and a special thanks for the contribution to the Boys and Girls Club. That certainly means a lot to Mike and I, and it certainly means a lot to our organization. So thanks for the quick snapshot of me, but a little bit more. Tina Seashore. I lead HR today as of September for our commercial segment. That is a $1 billion piece of the pie for Oshkosh. And we make some pretty cool things. We really help keep communities clean and efficient. We make refuse collection vehicles. We make concrete mixers, both front and rear discharge. We make specialty vehicles with crane operation, and just super cool stuff. So you probably touch or see, maybe not touch physically, but see what the commercial segment makes every single day. I watched our RCVs come through my neighborhood this morning. So very, very big equipment and high technology within them. So prior to that, I led global rewards for Oshkosh, and I had accountability for the kind of strategic design for all of our comp benefits, executive comp, HR systems type things for the enterprise, 15,000 folks across the globe. So as you can imagine, you probably work with that individual or that individual alike in your organization and how important it is. I can say now, being the top business partner in the commercial segment, there probably isn't a day that goes by that I'm not talking with our VP of Finance and our president. The three of us collectively together sit in a ton of strategic conversations, and we're always updating one another. So I have success stories just in my 8 months already in that role that I'm not going to share today. But before I came to Oshkosh 7 years ago, I worked for Bemis Company, who was acquired by Amcor, so heavy manufacturer, and been in HR basically all my life, and started out in retail for Walmart stores. So I've kind of seen it all, and been part of a Fortune 500 plus organization, publicly traded, which certainly has a lot of complexities. Yeah, and that's me. I actually live in Appleton, Wisconsin. I have 3 kiddos, 2 dogs, husband, and when I'm not working, I love to travel and see the world. That's me.
And Tina's being humble, but she's actually, an interesting story is that, obviously the world of work has changed since COVID started, and Tina's doing an outstanding job at commercial. We already really see the impact, and she's working, but she lives here still and is successfully navigating. And that's something that we as a company really didn't do a lot of in the past, and she's doing a great job, as is our VP of Finance, who lives in
Detroit
the commercial
area.
segment is headquartered in Dodge Center, Minnesota, near Rochester, and so it's working very well. But it's interesting just how the world of work has changed with COVID. In terms of myself, I've been at I actually grew up just a mile west of here in Neenah. Never expected to end up back in the area, but I think as with a lot of people, the area has a draw, and we ended up back here. But spent 9 years in public accounting in Madison after graduating from the University of Wisconsin-Madison at Grant Thornton. Then since I've been at Oshkosh for 16 years, really been in all parts of the business. I started in the corporate group, then moved to our commercial segment, lived in the Netherlands for a couple of years. So talk about HR and finance partnership. I would not have tried relocating your family over to the Netherlands with a 4-year-old and a 4-month-old, which was interesting, but couldn't have done it without the great help of the HR team. Spent time at our access equipment segment in Pennsylvania for a couple of years, and then most recently, before assuming the role of CFO, I was the Vice President of Finance at the Fire and Emergency segment, just up the road at Pierce, which is just a great business, great experience. So now I've been the CFO now for about 2.5 years. So my first act as CFO was pulling guidance because we went into the pandemic, and it's I think in the history of the company that had never been done. So it was a great trial by fire. A little bit more about Oshkosh. We have nearly 15,000 team members. We've actually grown in the past year. You see that we're very worldwide spread, 24 countries, 24 countries, 130 locations. A lot of those obviously manufacturing, a lot of sales and service organizations as well. And we were at about $7.7 billion in revenue last year. This year, our guidance calls for somewhere in the low $8 billion range. So we are sort of back in growth mode, seeing tremendous demand in our businesses right now. This is an interesting time to be talking to everyone because we actually had an analyst day at the New York Stock Exchange last Friday. The last one we had done is in 2016. So it was really a great opportunity for us to share our vision for the future. And one of the things that's really important, and again, there's going to be this consistent tie-in to why it's so important and why people are really the foundation of our company, but we really view ourselves as a technology industrial. So we have, many of you from the area may think of us as, hey, we build fire trucks, we build military vehicles. We have significant electrification projects, as an example, taking place in every one of our businesses. So you think about, and we have autonomy applications that we're launching and intelligent products. So you think about the talent that you need to bring into the organization. So I'm obviously focused on making sure we're hitting our long-term projections, but the reality is if we can't attract and retain the right level of talent, it's not possible for us to really accomplish our mission. So a strong theme on that, and that's, again, an example of why that partnership's so important. Really focus on purpose-built vehicles. So again, and that's serving everyone from construction workers in our access equipment business, to firefighters, to soldiers, and now most recently, postal carriers. So we believe we're going to be electrifying the postal service fleet over the next decade. Our brands. So we operate in 4 segments. It's access equipment. You'll know them best by, if you go by a construction site, you see orange and green boom lifts and scissor lifts. That's JLG. We're the largest producer of aerial work platforms and telehandlers in the world. It's a very global business. Also, we build Jordan brand wreckers and flatbeds in that business as well. Our defense business operates under Oshkosh Defense. Exciting new addition with Pratt Miller in the past year. Pratt Miller is not only helping us in technology spaces, but again, it was a huge infusion of talent into our organization. with very capable engineers, instrumental in winning a large defense program with our Stryker MCWS program, and a little kind of a neat little fact with them. They got their start actually in the racing business, so they have all these great capabilities on top of running the Corvette racing program for General Motors. So it's a really cool business. It also been heavily involved in autonomy and electrification. Then we have our fire and emergency business. Again, it's not only Pierce brand fire trucks, but also our Oshkosh Airport products, ARF trucks. So those are the big aircraft rescue firefighting vehicles you see at airports. And last but certainly not least, the business that Tina's in. Our strategy. So our strategy is summarized by three simple words: innovate, serve, and advance. You're going to see the significant tie-in of people. So one of the things that attracts us, and certainly attracts me to the company, and I'm sure attracted Tina, is we have a powerful purpose, and that's really making a difference in the lives of everyday heroes that do some of the most dangerous jobs in our communities. Whether that's a firefighter, whether it's a construction worker working 185 feet in the air, now postal carriers, soldiers, the folks keeping our building and keeping our cities clean with our refuse collection vehicles. So that purpose brings a lot of meaning to people in the company. And so that's, and foundationally, as we think of our strategy, it's really all about our people. Without our people, we can't be successful in delivering our mission.
Yeah, I'd like to add there that I think our everyday hero that we serve does some of the most dangerous jobs in the world. Right? You can, I think, a tow wrecker driver, it's like one in how many are killed on the roadside every day. So we take endless amounts of pride in the products we make, knowing that those folks stepping into those vehicles are really going places that most of us wouldn't go. And there's a ton of passion and pride around that. And you can see that in every single one of our manufacturing facilities. It's pretty special.
So then in terms of the strategies, breaking it down, innovate, it's really driving innovation, not only in our products, but also on the shop floor, continuous improvement, driving simplification into our businesses. Interesting on this from an innovation perspective, that front discharge concrete mixer at the top of the screen is actually fully electric. And it's a prototype stage, but it's been used quite extensively, great customer feedback. And the bottom truck is an electric fire truck that's actually been in service now for over a year in Madison, Wisconsin. So you think about electrifying things that you may not have expected, it would be early adopters in the electrification space. It's pretty powerful. Again, it's a testament to the talent we have in the organization. Serve, obviously, we want to make sure we're taking care of our products throughout the product life cycle. So it's not only aftermarket parts and service, it's also, as you think of the new world, new connected solutions, telematics, new revenue streams, and so on. And then certainly advancing into new markets. We're heavily involved in M&A and so on. So there's we see a lot of opportunity for growth in our business. And again, because we're very people focused, it's very important for us to be a recognized leader. Being a good corporate citizen, it's good for our people, it's good for our shareholders, and it's good for the communities we operate in. So we've been a 7-time world's most ethical company. We're on Fortune's most admired companies list. We're on the Dow Jones Sustainability Index. And again, our mission is to make a difference in not only our employees' lives, but in our team members' lives, but also our customers. Our core values, very people-oriented again, and then ultimately looking at ESG. So we have, one of the examples Tina will be talking about is how we're actually leveraging ESG and really putting our money where our mouth is and driving incentive compensation for our leaders to make a difference in our communities, increasing diversity and so on. Or actually, I think I'm covering.
You're covering that. I'll add to it. Don't worry. All right.
So with that, I'll turn it back over to Tina because we'll now transition. So I guess in general, I'm hoping that just by providing a bit more color on our company and where our focus areas are, it's going to become clear how central people are to that. And so I think it will dovetail well into the case studies we're going to talk about.
You bet. And I love our core values. I don't know if we can just throw them up right quick, Mike, one more time. And go back. You know, when I first started at Oshkosh, we had this acronym called CHAIR, and those were our core values. I don't think, wait, citizenship, honesty, I don't even know what they stood for. They weren't the letters, they were on a wall. And we've been on this journey of being a people first culture. We have the best products, we have the best customers, and we've really been focusing not just externally but internally on our people. And one of the values that I love, all of them, is that we are better together. And so the way that I approach my work internally is with that first. No matter what customer group I'm working with, no matter who it is, what function, and knowing that we can't get to where we want to go without each other. And I think that resonates with the partnership that's been built over time within the human resources and finance functions. So I just wanted to highlight that one because I'm hoping that you'll pick up on that a little bit too and why that's so important to us. All right. So we do have some learning objectives, but I want to spend just a little bit of time on this slide. We really believe that when we partner, there's a winning outcome. And we are going to share with you 4 case studies. Mike's alluded to that. And real life examples, recent ones even. And there's so many more that we could talk about since or that have happened before that. But I thought it would be fun to just take a quick, for us to walk down memory lane. So the first time I ever had to talk to Mike, I was the VP of Total Rewards. I don't know, I might have been in the position a year. So I started June 2015-ish. That's where it is.
I'll give it like 2 weeks that you're in the role.
No, I don't think so. And so, I've got our corporate finance team who has this authorization matrix, and who approves what, right? All the governance for stuff. And all of a sudden, I catch wind of this pension adjustment at Fire and Emergency that did not include me, and they just did it without any approval. So as daring and as, I would say, maybe stubborn a little bit and bold as I can be, because I'm like, I'm not going to let these people just walk all over me. So I call up Mike, and it's funny because we laugh about that. The first time we ever had an interaction was us doing this, right? And not without positive intent. But I'll tell you, at that moment, in just our journey as peer sets and partners in a lot of stuff, we probably didn't have the We Are Better Together or the value foundation that we have today, or the desire for partnership. It was just kind of like, well, we do what we do, and you do what you do, and yeah, we'll figure out what the end solution is, and we may fight about it and get really annoyed with one another, which is kind of what happened, right? So we've come a long way. I love that. And that may happen in your organization today. That just does not work. And I already alluded to the fact that today I am talking to my peer. Her name is Tina, VP of Finance. So it makes Brad Nelson, my president, he's never like, well, what Tina do I say? Mike too, right? You got to talk to us both, the Tinas. But we're always talking and communicating and collaborating and getting different perspectives and insights. So we're hopeful through the case studies that you'll see that. And this is really what we're hoping to do, and our learning objectives are on the next page. You want to fast forward? So that was all in your packet. I'm not going to go through that. It's really about learning to understand one another, why collaboration is so important, and ultimately can get you the outcomes. And we're on a growth trajectory. We have to be so connected and tied in to know the strategic initiatives of the organization and work together to get there and not work against each other. So let's move into some case studies. Anything you would like to share with our first encounter?
No, I think that I told her, I'm like, you should cover that because it's just thinking back to it, we've become such close business partners over the years that it's a funny example to look at. But what we quickly learned from it was that I think we both stepped back and tried to understand the perspective. It created a perspective, and I think from that point forward, it was very common for us to be picking the phone up all the time, saying, "Hey, I want to run this by you," or "We're hiring this person." The person's looking for more money or more benefits, and really having that close interaction. That really knowing that he was a go-to person, I would say vice versa.
Yep, absolutely.
So the first example, is financial acumen training. This is it's kind of an interesting one, and I'm going to branch out a little bit on it versus just what's on here. But one key learning that I've had throughout my career, whether it's really starting, I would say it really started at the fire and emergency segment, but as an organization, we've been probably fairly tight with information over time, that it's, finance can see what our results are, and we can't really show anyone else because we're a public company, but in the end, everyone has a good intention. Everyone wants to contribute to the financial performance, not just finance that owns it or the segment president. So early on at Fire and Emergency, we started realizing that sharing information is so critical for the success of the organization. Coming out of the Great Recession, our Fire and Emergency segment was performing low single-digit operating margins and just was not, but there was really a lack of understanding of what was really driving that. Mm-hmm. And it's because there was just a fundamental lack of information. We had sales folks selling products that actually were probably the exact opposite of what we should be selling, and so on. So education is so key, and information sharing. And this is really the spirit of this collaboration. And this has really come in a couple of forms over the years. So really the first example is we have an outstanding senior vice president of investor relations, and it's his life's mission to not only educate investors on our company, but also educate people throughout the company on how the stock market works. And when we're having an earnings call, who are the people that are calling in? What are buy-side and sell-side analysts? What just very basic things that they're basic to him, but normally you wouldn't, there's really no venue to learn about it. And so I would say HR was really the pilot group where Pat started, the individual's name's Pat, started piloting programs where he would sit or really meet with HR after an earnings call and talk about the earnings call. What are investors interested in? Talking about key financial measures. So we're constantly asking our company, what are your incremental margins? Well, that's, if you're not a finance person, that may not be intuitive what you're talking about. Or why, when they're talking about your trading multiple, what does that mean? So really educating people what our key stakeholders are looking for. And then even starting to get into reading our financial statements and understanding. So Pat's been doing that for a long time, really starting with HR. Now it's actually been broadened, and our treasurer, John Barrich, started classes now that he's doing financial acumen training, and heavy presence by human resources, but even broader to other areas now as well. And so John's really taking people through some of our public filings to really just educate people of what are investors looking at, what are some financial analysis concepts, what are things that we're looking at. Let's talk about capital allocation. When we talk about capital allocation, what does that mean? But it's been very well received, and actually after 2 earnings calls ago, the class was nearing graduation, and so right after an earnings call, I went straight downstairs to their meeting, and then fielded questions. So again, it's just a way to connect with the business and what we're driving and what are stakeholders looking for.
Yep, absolutely. But I think we're judged by our stock price, Sometimes it's as simple as the number, right? And as complicated as it is. And as a person who is partnered with Pat, and I've actually brought this to several members of my team, the feedback is amazing. What I see is more confidence, asking smarter questions, just being smarter business people, especially in our function. It's changing the conversation when they're meeting with their folks. And again, it's giving them the courage to just be different and show up different. And it's been awesome. And this is, I think, something, again, that John and Pat are so passionate about, and they take the time to do it. We appreciate it so much, but they also get to learn from the audience as well. And, you know, and it was kind of crazy, you know, 6 years ago, I think, is when we started this, to just think we hadn't ever had it. Just a simple request. And when our earnings report comes out, like, what are the things that matter in there? Why do they matter? You know, why does our stock price jump or not jump after a call? You know, what can we do? Like, if we do something, how does that impact earnings per share when we're making decisions? And just the language and the understanding of how a company makes money, it's been phenomenal. And we just see our other functions getting smarter, and we're also sharing more information. We do it in incentive comp quarterly. We're very transparent coming out of our earnings call. So I mean, that's another example of taking financial data and applying it to the general population and understanding how they're attached and tied to our ultimate goal. And this has been super cool to see. So I would challenge people to, if you're not doing this in your organization, I think you will, if you do it, and it doesn't take much time or even materials. I think we had the website up for investors. We have to recreate content. It created such a great space for vulnerability, and then just that extra courage afterwards and understanding. It's been awesome.
I think one of the other areas that it helps with, I think, some of the natural tension that you may have, and this is not, we're obviously talking about a lot of examples. It's not that Tina and I don't debate anymore. We,
yep.
you know,
we debate.
But it's, if I have a better understanding of where she's coming from a comp perspective, and she has a better understanding of where I'm coming from a financial impact perspective, that level, you can have a much better conversation. Mm-hmm. And I think it de-escalates the situation. Yeah. Whereas maybe historically in our organization, where the financials were held so closely to best, that it seemed like finance was sort of the keeper, mm-hmm. and there was like this mystery around it. And at the end of the day, you know, finance would get frustrated. Well, HR is trying to drive this initiative, going to kill our forecast or our budget. Well, we didn't really arm HR with the tools to understand what it. So now it changes the conversation. That Tina will call up and say, "Hey, we're looking at this, and you know, we're constantly looking at incentive plans and so on." And she'll call up and say, "Hey, I have this idea that I think could help us be more competitive in the marketplace. You know, I'm working with the finance team already to try to understand what that looks like and how we can implement that." So it just, again, having that level of understanding just breaks down barriers.
Absolutely.
Should we go to the next one?
Yeah, let's go. Unless anyone has any, can we ask questions in the middle? Am I going off script? Do you want us to wait till the end? Okay.
How about either?
Yeah, does anyone have a question? Oh, okay, yes.
When you talk about the financial trading, does it
Yep.
Thank you. When you do the financial trading, does it transcend just human resources? I assume it's across all the company?
It started as HR, and now we broadened it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Hot mic.
Back over here.
Question too, when the live audience poses
Sure.
it to you, so our virtual audience.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, they can't hear off of that mic, is that correct? Okay.
Okay, I have a question. Does it go the other way? Do you learn from her as well?
Absolutely.
Wait 1 minute. The question was, does it go the other way? The first question was, does the training transcend outside of HR? And Mike answered that yes. And then the second question, well, is it reverse? Does Mike learn from Tina? Does Mike learn from Tina?
I do, and a great example of that is one thing that I did not realize when you become the CFO is the amount of disclosure in our proxy and so on. And I had very little expertise or knowledge of all things comp matter. Obviously, I audited 401k plans, I understand 401k plans, but the nuances of the proxy votes and ISS and how we're assessed from a comp perspective. Everything I know, I've learned from Tina. So anyways, so she's been, so it definitely goes both ways. And I think that just even from a compliance standpoint, I would say not only Tina, but just broadly, we have outstanding HR teams throughout the company that do a great job of really communicating, whether it's compliance or where we have benefit gaps. And I think that it is definitely a two-way
Absolutely.
street.
Yeah, I had the privilege for 7 years to author the CDNA at Oshkosh, and I did it as well at BMIS. So I was kind of sad this last one I didn't get to.
Yeah.
I did review it, but I was actually not writing it. So, it was a little scary to give that up, but it ended up being awesome. All right.
Number 2.
All right. So let me set this one up. I'd like to actually start with an accolade that I just learned of. And Scott Sherman, are you in the room? Where did he just go?
He just ducked out.
Oh, okay. Well, he was going to help me. He was my phone a friend. AJ Gallagher is in the audience, and they are Oshkosh's retirement and benefits consultant. So they were very instrumental in helping us along with other partners. But what I had just learned is that Empower nominated Oshkosh to plan sponsor something, I don't know what agency it is or group, and I had nominated and put forth our marketing and communication plan with this implementation, and we actually won the award. So the work that was done here, we can talk about it internally and how it impacted our folks at Oshkosh, but we had our vendor partner actually put forth our work in, kind of in their ecosystem, so that they recognized it as really positive. So I think that is a really neat thing to share because it further reinforces just what we believed about this program. So the opportunity was, we were with an organization, 19 years, our prior 401k partner, and there was a desire and a need. I mean, we have a fiduciary responsibility, and we need to do RFPs on a basis that makes sense. Make sure we're staying competitive, contracts are right, all of that type of stuff. We went into that situation having zero willing to just move. All of a sudden, we came out of the process with, holy heck, we need to move to somebody new. But the important part of this is really anchored to our financial well-being pillar at Oshkosh. We do focus on physical, emotional, and financial well-being, and we care a heck of a lot about this benefit for our folks. And we always want to put in front of our team members the best in class that's out there. It's not a B player or C player. We are out there to find the best, and we do have the courage to change if we need to. But the special part of this is, I would say when I first started, I probably would have ran this project myself. I mean, I know how to vendor manage. I know how to do RFPs. I, sometimes can do purchasing jobs, although I don't do those anymore because there are better suited people. I have the tools in my toolkit to go out and find benefit platforms and plans. But this was, in my learning journey, this is an opportunity for us to bring forward people, subject matter experts from finance, from treasury, from digital technology, from human resources, from marketing at the beginning. And we really were able to identify the intent and then when we went into the RFP process, we actually visited these vendors together. We talked about results afterwards. I mean, everything from researching who we wanted to go out in RFP, to the site visits, to the way that we were going to evaluate, to the implementation plan, to the communication rollout, to our integration with the investment committee. So at the time, I sat on the investment committee being the head of rewards, and Mike is on that too with our CEO, our general counsel, our chief HR officer, treasurer, investor, I don't know, a couple other people. And that committee is, we are given authority from our board to operate with the management team for the investment committee purposes. The alignment that resulted in bringing all those people from the beginning, I always hear like fear of missing out. That's a real thing. But when you bring people together in the beginning and they get it, then they become part of every solution. And that's what happened. And we actually had to go in front of our investment committee to get this approved. We were in the middle of the pandemic, by the way. In the middle of the pandemic. And this team was so passionate about, yes, I know it's the middle of the pandemic. We've done our research. Our team members deserve, now more than ever, something better. And I think being the investment committee member, which I also had to remove my sponsor hat, you know, sometimes you have to play multiple roles. Those meetings with the investment committee folks were just very seamless. They sensed our alignment, they sensed the risks that we, you know, why do you do it, why don't you do it? And that was just very seamless for us as our organization, even in the midst of the pandemic. I will tell you one thing that we did do was alter the timeline. We had an aggressive implementation. We listened to some stakeholders, and we actually worked with Empower and adjusted that. So we delayed the project slightly. I think it was only a quarter.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you know, there was certainly fear because it was pandemic, but internally our leadership teams, I mean, our segment presidents, their leadership teams were all bought in on board. The auditing process, we even brought in more of our friends from finance and HR just to make sure every detail was identified. And it went off. And guess what?
Silence.
No noise.
Tell
me a time when that's happened. I mean, I've been in HR for 20 years. I've implemented benefits all over the place. I've closed pension plans. I've had to stand up in front of thousands of people and have done that. This was awesome. And our marketing strategy and communication plan, which include all these folks, it really was the team member at the center and doing the right thing for our people first culture. It's just a super cool example. And I think a couple years ago, we wouldn't have done it that way. And we've learned and we grew and it resulted in something really special.
And it's, I'm sure many of you, just being many of you finance executives, if you're in public, probably see Jeff back there and Jeff. It's interesting. I've spent the first part of my career auditing benefit plans, and I always dreaded when there was a plan sponsor change because usually it was never seamless. There were either accounting issues or there were compliance issues, and I think so I contrast that to, and in some cases historically, if there's you go onto a new payroll system, typically in our organization, finance runs payroll, so we do a heck of a job making sure that that our payroll records were accurate, but by the way, were we compliant, those other details. On the flip side, there have been implementations where ultimately, and not necessarily just HR, but other functional areas have run where finance wasn't involved, and the user experience was pretty good, but we couldn't account for it. We didn't have the reports, and so all of a sudden there was sort of mass chaos after. So the difference in this case was being aligned at the beginning. All those considerations were identified up front, so it ultimately became a seamless implementation. So I think that it is that strong partnership from the beginning, from RFP through developing the business plan to make sure all key stakeholders and requirements were met, and it was very successful.
Yeah. All right, we'll pause there. Any quick questions? Well, please tell Scott that he was not here as my phone-a-friend when he comes back. Everyone can harass him. I give you.
Scott, please report to the conference centers.
All
Okay.
right.
Next one. One of the things we talked about is we believe very strongly in being good corporate citizens. So we've had, from really back since 2014, we've had greenhouse gas emission reduction goals. It was ultimately 25% by 2024. Already have exceeded that as of present. As well as other goals around waste diversion and so on. So that's been an important part of our core. But now we wanted to, obviously, with us being a Midwestern-based company, I think we saw an opportunity to take it to the next level from a diversity standpoint. So now we've also added diversity goals to our organization. And it's one thing to just say, many organizations say, yeah, it's great to be diverse. We want diversity. So it's there's an inherent goodness about it, because I think everyone's read the studies of how diversity leads to better performance in companies. But the practical aspect of it is, we wanted to put, and I made the comment earlier, put our money where our mouth was, and really put meaningful metrics forth that are really incenting people to do the right thing. And I think so doing that, this is very much an emerging concept. So so this was an example where Tina, with HR as well as finance, had to work very closely together to figure out how to do this, because we knew it was a good concept. We believe very strongly that other public companies are going to be following over time, and private companies as well. But really the how, in terms of, because you think of, typically with incentive compensation plans, there's very clear measures that you hit X target, there's Y payout, and particularly there's payouts at different levels. So it's a whole different concept when you start looking at things like greenhouse gas emissions reductions, or increasing our level of diversity. So one of the areas to start with was seeing what other comps were out there. Well, very quickly we found there were not a lot. So then, that really got to hand it to Tina and the HR team that did a very extensive deep dive on a lot of the metrics that we have, good history, really everything from, because ultimately, if you want goals and you want them to drive behavior, you want to make sure that, again, they're back to the financial sharing. We want to be understandable, we want to be measurable, and ultimately meaningful. And that was really the task at hand, and it started with the data mining exercise. So it started with that, but then it was also going before our compensation committee of our board of directors and really pitching the idea, which of course they liked the idea, because it's trying to get everyone's head wrapped around how this would actually work. Was obviously, again, an area that we worked very, very closely on. Ultimately, we were successful in doing so. We have targets now that have been established. They're vetted by our board. We're proud to be able to share those with our investors, because I think it really is it's good for our employees. It's good for the communities we live and work in.
Absolutely. I mean, eventually I'll say, well, I don't have the accountability anymore. This has to be explained in our CD&A. And if you've ever written one or read one, when you talk about how a financial measure, if it's total shareholder return relative, you have to be able to precisely identify how it's calculated. What's the puts, the takes, the numerator, the denominator, times what's your scale. And we have that with relative return on invested capital too, with a peer group for Oshkosh. I mean, this all has to be written and explained and be meaningful to our shareholders, pass Glass Lewis's sniffer, ISS reporting. We all believe it will, but I think that's a result that we end up having to do a year later, because we're always retrospective with a proxy. But that's really important, how we engaged our HR committee. And I wanted to just mention, we call at Oshkosh our comp committee, our traditional committee, the human resources committee, because their responsibility and oversight does span beyond just, I would say, basic executive compensation and benefits matters. But that's critical, again, from an alignment, is all of these things have downstream ramifications and impact. And our shareholder needs to read it and add value in it and hopefully vote our shares, and that we continue to stay in good graces of all the shareholders out there that count on us.
Another important part of the partnership, again, going back to traditional compensation measures, it's easy, straightforward to measure, and therefore for those of us that have responsibility over making sure our books and records are accurate, we need to account for it ultimately. And that was another key aspect of the collaboration, was making sure that we designed the plans in such a way that we could properly measure progress towards it and ultimately ensure that we're keeping our books and records accurate as we go through the process.
Absolutely.
So again, a lot of iteration going back and forth in that scenario.
Yeah, and Mike said this, but we didn't have the benefit from learning from really anybody. So the great thing is when you're publicly traded, you can go out and find out a lot of stuff once it's been released to the public. But I think we had like 10% was the number of organizations who are using this in the way that we are. And so we really had to like lean in, and we learned as much as we could. We've got a great comp consultant as well, but this to me just felt very internal and relying on one another, looking to our left and right. Do we have the right people at the table? Iteration, talk about it, why we shouldn't. And I think it's just another great example of, again, I've used the word courage a lot, being courageous to step into a space that we know is super important. And we have, executives compensation and folks that are measured off of this. So you talked about in the beginning, we're putting our money where our mouth is, and I think it's going to be positive for Oshkosh.
And importantly, with the rigor that went into the process, I think there was a high degree of confidence in the process. So there was a high degree of alignment of the executives that are ultimately under the plan as well.
You bet. All right. Well, we'll wrap up with this one. Did anyone else navigate the pandemic? I thought that mask picture was so cute, kind of in a way. So sorry if I know I'm talking to a bunch of finance people. Maybe you don't think those things are that cool, but I thought that was cute. And it just made me just a sense of relief and a chuckle to how far we've come. And I certainly know that we're still in this, as our world is still navigating this. But so Oshkosh was deemed an essential business. I think that's really important to understand. Every one of you probably were met with challenges, in March of 2020 and we watched it come from China through Europe and into the US. And I was part of our crisis management team, so we've been working on just how to deploy stuff since then. But again, essential business. Our production team members never left. Our global headquarters shut down for 2 months. I think I returned to work May 20th of that year to the building. And a lot of that is around kind of better together, people first culture. And each one of our business segments was met with different challenges. We had supply chain constraints in some. We had, I don't want to call it record, but very large backlogs in others. And we couldn't let people off. And in certain cases, we were trying to figure out how do we, shut down operation for a week or 2 weeks, bring it back up to meet the demands of the customer and the supply chain constraints. Everybody had a different issue or concern. But number one was to keep our team members safe and to limit the spread of COVID-19 in our facilities. And we did not want that to happen at Oshkosh. And we had very few instances, even still to this day, where we believe that our team members have contracted COVID-19 from another team member. So that was critical. But we also had to meet the demands of our customers. I talked about that. Cost was an issue. I think it was for all of us. How do we meet our shareholders' expectations, our customers' expectations. Our team members were scared because they were hearing in the news people were losing their jobs left and right. And we had some stuff to really work through. We knew what we had to take out from a cost perspective. And I'll tell you, in other circumstances in my life where you have to reduce cost, the first place people go is headcount. And that's natural, right? And we had to look at that in a way. We had to look at how do we slow down the pace of wages. And we did have to implement some furloughs. We did have to implement pay reductions for a period of time. We actually, our executives took a pay reduction from April 1st through the end of September. I did as well. Some of our groups had to do 1 week, 2 week, or 3 weeks of furlough. We all had different avenues, but I'll tell you, we were not going to mess with people's financial well-being. We held that principle strong. We did not stop our 401k match. We did not cut benefits. We wanted our folks to know that we were going to get through this, and that's exactly what we did. So when I talk about just cost takeout, I mean, the amount of conversation we had with keeping the team member at the center and caring for them and our underpinning with our people first culture was so critical and important. How we made the decision, how we communicated the decision. And I can tell you, our whole company rallied around one another and did what they had to do in their own individual part to make sure that we were still standing at the end of it. And again, we're still going through it. We still have supply chain issues. It's if it's not something, it's the next. So we were really able to achieve what we set out to do with that flexibility, unique application in a specific business unit, but it still felt fair and consistent across our entire organization. And so much that we knew where we were trending from an operating income, which is one of our key measures for our incentive plan, our short-term incentive plan compensation. And we knew we were well below threshold. We knew we were well below threshold. But we looked around, and it's just true Oshkosh fashion. We persevere is one of our core values. We're tenacious. We fight through the challenges. We fight against big competitors. It's who we are, and everyone just rallied and performed and kept us, in a better position than probably we should have been as an organization. So our board of directors actually recognized this, and in my prior role, I was privileged to attend every HR committee meeting. I actually authored most of the content and documents and presented a ton of it to our HR committee, along with partnership. Mike and I did a lot of stuff together, and our CHRO, certainly John Pfeiffer, our president and CEO as well. But they came to us inquiring just about incentive comp. And we again rallied together and said, we kind of were getting underpinning feelings of the board willing to take positive discretion, which, again, publicly traded company, you don't pass any type of sniffer from Glass Lewis or ISS. They can actually encourage shareholders to deny or vote down your say on pay, which is not good. That is not a place to be in, which has yet to happen to Oshkosh. I don't foresee it ever happening. But we were able to come together, talk about the discretion aspect in our short-term incentive plan, really share and tell a compelling story of what was actually happening. And our board was very keen on listening, and they wanted to do the right thing for our people. We assessed risk with ISS. We tried to review other proxy statements in which maybe they were doing discretion for purposes through the pandemic. Our fiscal year used to be 10/1 through 9/30, so we kind of got the benefit of some early filers. So we looked at that, and we really honed in together and came to a conclusion that we were going to not fight for it, but we were going to talk holistically about what we had gone through and what our management team did to keep our organization in the shape that it was, which was amazing to watch. And the end result is they actually approved an incentive comp payout, and we paid below the threshold value. Oops, we came up with the right formulaic approach, pro forma statements were created, and then took the test is we actually had to write it in the CD&A of what we did, how we did it, how we approached it, and our say on pay that year was just as good as it was the other years, and no concerns from ISS or Glass Lewis. And it was because we were specific. We talked about the why and all of the puts and takes of it, and we're very transparent. And that's just, again, an example of collaboration, specifically between HR and finance and all of these decisions, and ultimately how it translates into our shareholders and our board of directors.
Because in that case, it was very important to be specific. So we gained market share during it. We exceeded our cost reduction goals. We, ultimately we improved labor efficiency.
We did.
In some cases, so there was very tangible.
Higher OI on lower sales, wasn't that one?
And that was really what. So Tina, obviously having the background from an HR perspective, and what. Again, we're working closely with the broader team, but really pulling that information together and into obviously compelling documentation and so on that we could offer that. So again, a great success, and of course, it was a huge win from a people-first culture perspective.
Yeah, we also implemented a new pay practice during this for our folks who couldn't come to work, because in the beginning, remember, there was no testing and you were automatically quarantined. So we implemented that and got alignment and agreement across the entire organization. And certainly we had to analyze the data. Could we afford it? Was it the right thing to do? There was just one new benefit and compensation practice that we implemented during this. And it was all in the spirit of, we don't want our folks coming in if they're not feeling well, and we don't want them worrying about their paycheck. And if you're a close contact, you have to get sent home. I want to make one comment, because this, as an HR leader, if I didn't, I would be really upset with myself. When Mike and I, as senior leaders in our organization, partner together, what do you think that means for our teams? What do you think that means for my direct reports working with Mike's direct reports? The flow of information is better. The communication and expectation around collaboration is already set. When they see us do this or talk about that, or we bring each other up in conversation, the flow of stuff getting done in decision making is so much easier for your people below. So I can't, that's an added benefit, but it literally is true.
And hopefully it gave you a few ideas if you how you can break the barriers down, and again, from humble beginnings of our working relationship to where we are today. But appreciate everyone's participation. I guess open it up to